Blog Talk Radio.
Monday. It is Monday, ladies and gentlemen, August 17th, 2015. Tonight on the show, we're going to be talking about anxiety, panic, recovery. We're going to be joined with a leading anxiety and panic recovery expert. He's based out in the UK. We'll get to that in 1 second. Just some big news. Tomorrow we have Road Warrior Animal. He's a former WWF World Heavyweight Champion. On Thursday we'll have from CNN Beth Karras along with Joseph Scott Morgan to talk in the world of news. Follow the show on Twitter at Mr. King Jordan RAD. It is with great pleasure to announce our next guest that I'm going to bring in right now. Ladies and gentlemen, from the Linden Method. He is one of the best in terms of anxiety. I'm going to talk to him right now, Mr. Charles Linden. Good evening, Charles, and welcome back to King Jordan Radio. It's been a few years. How are you?
It has, Jordan, yeah, but it doesn't seem that long, but it's great to be back.
It's great to be back, and yes, you're not in your UK, you're out of the UK. Where are you as we speak?
I'm in the Balearic Islands in the Mediterranean, on an island called Mallorca.
Everything good there?
Beautiful. Too hot, really. Out here with my family, with my wife and children, having a lovely time.
Oh, that's awesome. And in New York here, we got a heat wave. We're close to 100 degrees today for the first time all summer.
Wow.
So I guess it's hot across the border. But I want to get into you. Now, you're personally going on almost 20 years of relief. Is that correct?
That's right. Yeah. I suffered with anxiety till I was about 27 years old. I'm 47 now, so I'm going on 20 years completely recovered. And about 19 years I've been helping people to recover, people from around the world.
Now, the first thing that most people talk about on social media, and I know I'm a client as well as a radio host, but I know, but I want you to say it, is why the Linden Method and why not something else?
Okay. I mean, when I discovered it, I was a sufferer, so I was looking for a solution. I tried CBT, medication, various types of counselling and psychotherapy. I'd been hospitalised. I'd had alternative therapies. So I knew there was a solution out there because I knew people that had suffered with anxiety disorders and no longer suffered. So despite being told repeatedly that you can't recover, I was told, I believed wholeheartedly that you could. So I set about finding a way to recover, and I recovered very, very quickly. And there were a few realizations I made. mostly with regard to the true nature of anxiety disorders, but also the true nature of the psychophysiology of anxiety disorders. And as it happens at the time, as I recovered, whilst it caused my recovery and the people around me that I'd passed it on to, I wasn't fully aware of the true science, if you like, behind why it had worked. And now, 20 years later, that science is very, very clear. And what's happened is, over the years, is that we've developed what we believe to be the first dedicated, accredited anxiety recovery therapy. Because it's like all things, Jordan, all things in the body especially, there's a process.
Right.
And you can't rush the process, any process. Process is process. You can't change it. And obviously with the body you have processes going on, such as digestion and respiration and circulation. Everything in the body works to a certain blueprint, a certain pattern. And anxiety recovery is just the same. There is only one solution to our high anxiety conditions. There is only one recovery process. There is only one cure. And the body does that itself. What we do with the Linden Method is we show people how to force that to happen. So instead of allowing it to happen by chance or allowing it to happen through just a chance or opportune combination of life circumstances, we've worked out a formula that makes it happen. And when you use that formula in your life, when you utilize the formula in the correct way, and when you do as requested, your physiology and psychology align, and you go back to what I call your birth preset anxiety level. And that is what is commonly known as the emotion of fear, because anxiety is the inappropriate manifestation of the emotion of fear. Fear is necessary, fear is normal, fear is natural. It should happen. We need it. It keeps us safe. It prevents us from finding ourselves in danger. It identifies and deals with real risk appropriately. But I often say this to people, and it kind of puts it in a very physical sort of sense. We all need to go to the toilet, for example, but nobody needs diarrhea. Going to the toilet is a normal physical manifestation of the digestive process, but diarrhea is the extreme manifestation of going to the toilet. And it's the same with fear and anxiety. Everybody needs fear, but nobody needs anxiety. And it's exactly the same process. And the emotion of fear is necessary, and it's absolutely vital to our survival. But anxiety, nobody needs it. It's not necessary. It's inappropriate. And it's unnecessary in that you can cure it and you can become completely and permanently anxiety. That's why the Linden Method is so necessary.
So, yes, in other words, though, unless there is actually right in evidence in your face, like a tiger is ready to, get at you, you should disregard, in your premise of your way of coping with it, you should actually let the anxiety go. Let it, in fact, I heard in one of your tapes, laugh at it at times. Make it do as worst as possible. Can you explain that in a sense of making it doing it as worst as possible? Okay.
Well, in the Linden Method process, if you want to call it a process, in the Linden Method program, there are a variety. There's a group of multifaceted techniques that you apply to make the recovery happen. In amongst those is nestled this idea that anxiety, as I say, is the inappropriate manifestation of fear. And as you rightly said, fear is only appropriate when there's something there to be frightened of, something physical, something that can actually cause you harm. Now, that could take the form of a bacteria, an animal, a man with a gun. It doesn't matter what it is, a near car crash, or whatever it is. Whatever you're confronted with, your senses will detect it and respond appropriately. That is absolutely necessary. And what you're talking about there is allowing the anxiety to do its worst, just allowing it to flow over you like a wave. Ultimately, anxiety and fear are just physical manifestations. None of those things that you experience, whether it's the shortness of breath, the palpitations, the sweating, the shaking, the dizziness, the racing thoughts, all of these things are designed to prepare you for or part of the process of fighting or fleeing from something dangerous. But they're not dangerous in themselves. Because think about it logically. If we have a system developed in humans during evolution to keep us safe, such as the fear or the fight or flight response, why would it ever be appropriate for that to cause you damage when you're confronted by fear? So if a tiger jumps out of the woods at you, and you suddenly passed out, or felt sick, or did something inappropriate. Why would that be appropriate in that situation? The body hasn't developed a process through evolution that would cause you harm. So nothing that you experience during anxiety or during panic or agoraphobia or OCD or any of these manifestations of high anxiety, none of these things are dangerous. So you can just kind of let them go. And during the process of recovery that the Linden Method is, what you need to do is understand what is appropriate and what is inappropriate fear. Because there's definitely appropriate fear. Appropriate fear
right.
is that fear that's attached to things that are real, that are threatening. Inappropriate fear, false fear as I call it, and I sometimes call it mind BS, which kind of paints a picture. Because that's
right.
exactly what it is. It's just they are inappropriate thoughts attached to complete fantasy. So you can, whilst in a panic attack, you can disregard them.
Right, disregarding is very important, because then I guess what you're saying is your body gets used to it, and it'll just accept it as a regular, if you were laughing hilariously, right?
Totally, yeah, and it forms a very strong part of the process. It is only part of the process, though, Jordan. Recovery takes more than that. As I say, recovery is something multifaceted, which sounds complex. The process of recovery is very, very simple. The brain is a very complex machine, biological machine, that actually outputs some fairly simple behaviors. We'd like to think it's some kind of complex machine that creates complex activity. It isn't. It isn't that complex at all. Whilst we might not fully understand the biology of the brain, its function actually produces some fairly simple results: physical responses, emotional responses, and so recovery is very, very simple. It just requires the correct approach.
Now, there are going to be people that say, you know what, I've tried everything. What would you say to those people that are listening now that tried everything and, come to think of it, I've tried everything, and until 2008, I got better. I did well. I'm living proof, but what would you say to somebody who has tried everything, and there are a lot of things out there that don't work, but what would you say that the Linden Method brings that others don't?
Well, the thing is, Jordan, it would sound like a sales pitch if I sat here and said the Linden Method is the only thing that works. It's not that the Linden Method is the only thing that works. It's that the Linden Method is the only thing that is a vehicle for what works. We have truly identified, from the blueprint of the human body and the human mind, we have truly identified both what causes and what cures anxiety disorders. And I'll explain what I mean. The cause of anxiety disorders aren't the life circumstances, the bereavement, the stress, the money worries, the divorce. These aren't causes. These are catalysts for high anxiety events. These are the normal things in life that would cause people to feel stressed, let's say, to have elevated levels of the emotion of fear. But that under normal circumstances, with most people, the fear will rise and fall. There's a distinct group in society, and this is all down to evolution, who have a predisposition to developing an anxiety disorder. And those people are people who I believe are in the top 20% intellectually. So you have people below that 20% who have a lesser chance to develop an anxiety disorder, and as you get down towards the 1% or the 0%, if you like, it gets less and less. But towards 80 and above 80% of the population who have what I call this superior intellect through developmental, through the development of human biology and human evolution and social evolution specifically, there's a distinct group of people who have a higher level of intellect. Now, these people have a genetic gift, if you like, that predisposes them to the development of an anxiety disorder. So all of these life catalysts, whilst 80% of the population will deal with them and just move on, or even ignore them, or not even find them that relevant in their lives, there are 20% who create these sort of advanced risk assessments. And anybody suffering from anxiety who's listening now will know what a risk assessment is. What I'm talking about are the what-if thoughts. What if this happens? What if that happens? What if I collapse? What if I have a panic attack? What if I die? What if my family can't be fed? What if? These advanced risk assessments that cycle within the brain, creating symptoms, creating thoughts, creating symptoms, creating thoughts. And the thing is, these people are the people who are at danger of developing anxiety disorder. So for all those people out there that have an anxiety disorder and they say, I've tried everything. Okay, so what have you tried? Medication, various types of medication, whether they're synthesized medication, so, medication created to, mind-altering medication, or whether they're alternative medication or herbs. What else have they tried? Meditation, relaxation, hypnosis, mindfulness. You can keep going on. NLP, tapping. Oh, I've tried them all and they don't work. I'm a lost cause. Well, that's it because they haven't yet tried what the human body needs in order to make the change. What's happened is that through the development of various treatments for anxiety disorders, scientists, psychologists, and medics and people in universities have been looking for solutions, focusing on the symptomology. So focusing on the panic attacks, focusing on the obsessions, focusing on the compulsions, focusing on the phobias, but they haven't yet focused on the root cause. So what I discovered 20 years ago when I recovered was that if you create a program that attacks the very core of the anxiety disorder and actually looks at exactly what it is that causes anxiety disorders, not all these catalysts, but the cause, which is present in that 20-25% of the population, then you can correct that. You can reach inside the brain, if you like, into the subconscious, into the part of the brain that creates all of these autonomic responses, like respiration and circulation and digestion, and all these things that happen whether you're awake or you're asleep. And you can make a fine-tuning adjustment so that fear never becomes anxiety. It switches off inappropriate fear, gets rid of the anxiety, it gets rid of the phobias, it gets rid of the compulsions, it gets rid of all that anxious obsession, and whether that's health anxiety or OCD or self-harming or eating disorders, and it switches it off. Now, there's nothing else out there that does this. There's nothing else out there that treats it, and that's why we now have LAR coaching. LAR is the name that we give for it's a qualification that people can get to become anxiety recovery practitioners. Because what's happened is that the Linden Method, to practice the Linden Method as a support specialist, so that as the people in-house that support my clients, and also working out there in the wider sort of populace as an anxiety recovery coach, what we've done is identified and created a program that people can actually learn through a program of learning at NCFE level 4, which is a professional qualification, and that makes LAR and TLM, the Linden Method, an accredited practice, an accredited therapy. And so what we've got here now is a cure, a solution that is developed as it can be delivered as a therapy by therapists, by practitioners working in practice, to a specific diagnostic and then treatment equation. And when that equation is applied to anybody's life, whether they're 6 years of age or 106 years of age, it resets the subconscious responses that cause anxiety disorders, it cures the anxiety disorder, and it also prepares that person to function normally in the future and to be, in effect, immune from ever developing another anxiety disorder. It resets them completely, and it reallocates all of that subconscious stuff that's going on in anxiety disorders that is immediately on waking every morning. All of those risk assessments, that management of your anxiety, where you're saying, well, if I do this today, it won't make me as anxious. It could cause agoraphobia, so I'll stay at home. I won't expose myself to the things that make me more anxious, so I'll stay at home. I'll protect myself. All of that just fades away, and people go back out there into the world prepared and more capable of living more fulfilling and more satisfied lives, because they no longer suffer from an anxiety disorder that takes away about 80% of their physical and mental attributes. It's that simple.
Wow.
And it works every single time without fail.
Charles, can you share with my audience a story that is close to your heart? Maybe when one of your customers or one of your clients that have you seen in such a site that it would even be a very a hardship to look at first, that the person came to, in effect, get better. Can you share with us maybe your greatest success with one of your clients?
Well, I mean, to be honest, I don't want to sound like I'm being clever, Jordan, but, there have been so many. I can tell you about a young girl.
Inspiration is good, too.
Yeah. Well,
inspiration.
I'll get. In fact, if somebody wants to look on our website, on the lindencenter.org website, they'll look on the children's page. There's a video from a girl, a wonderful girl called Holly. She was an inspiration to me, and she's been an inspiration to hundreds, if not thousands, of children ever since.
Right.
She touched my heart in a special way because she was in a desperate way. She had actually been referred to the Priory in London. Now, I don't know whether anybody out there knows the Priory, but the Priory is probably the UK's best known private psychiatric facility. It's very expensive. It's very well respected.
Right.
And it's an amazing place for people with certain kinds of psychiatric disorders. And she was 14 years of age, and she was hospitalized. 14 years of age. And she was in there for self-harming, panic disorder, agoraphobia, and a variety of compulsions and all sorts of obsessions. And she was in a really bad way. And she'd kind of protected herself a little bit by, she sort of moved towards being a goth, and she used to wear her hair over her face and wear very heavy makeup and black clothes. So there was kind of a screen going up, if you like. And her parents, who are very lovely people, felt absolutely desperate, as you can imagine. They had other children, and it was just very desperate for them. So they heard about me through a friend of a friend, and they phoned me in desperation. She'd been in the Priory for a number of weeks, if not months. I think, at a guess, I'm trying to remember back now. I think she'll tell you on the video. It was 14 or 16 weeks she'd been in this hospital, and basically she hadn't changed. I mean, her parents were beyond desperate. So they called the centre, and very often if there's a very desperate case like that looks like it's going to end tragically, I step in, and I did step in. I asked her to come and see me on a Saturday morning, and I went into the centre, opened up the centre, and she arrived and sat opposite me, and she was very closed off. She wasn't at all receptive to what I was saying to start with, and it just, it took some time. But what I did was I kind of deconstructed the barriers. I'm a 47-year-old man with a bald head and a lot of life experience. She's a 14-year-old girl. It wasn't the most natural friendship to start with, as you can imagine. I mean, it was quite strange for her, I'm sure. But when I meet people with anxiety, Jordan, what is very apparent is that we're a very distinct group of. We're kind of if you like, some kind of fraternity. We're of like mind, and it doesn't take long when when you're with somebody that suffered or is suffering to create a very it's a very deep understanding that you suddenly develop. So I sat with this girl for about 40 minutes and I developed that kind of understanding with her, and slowly she started to raise her eyes and part her hair and look at me, and we talked, and I told her exactly what her anxiety was, why it was caused, why she was self-harming, why she had panic attacks. I got inside her head and I made her realize that I was her once. And within an hour, she was sat upright. She was looking at me. She put her hair behind her ears, and she was getting it. And I said, now listen, you've got to change everything from this moment on. You've got to do what I say. You've got to get out there and do exactly how I say. Reconstruct your life, how I've told you to do it. Use the program, use the pack, read my book, watch my videos, and rebuild from this moment on. So she looked like a completely different girl by the end of the session. And her mum came back into the room, and she said, "Wow." She said, "Holly," she said, you look so different. And she said, "Mum, can you take me to the hairdressers and have my hair dyed back to its normal colour this afternoon?" And her mum said, "Of course I can, Holly." And she said, "Mum, will you take me to get some new clothes?" And she said, "Holly, of course I will." And she said, "Holly," she said, "what about your self-harming and your panic?" And she said, "I'm never going to do that again." She said, "I've had enough. That's it. It's finished." And I said, "Holly, look, if you ever want to come back and see me again, make an appointment and come and see me again." She said, "I won't need to, Charles." She said, "I've got it. So I'm going to take your pack away and I'm going to do it." This was on a Friday night, okay? On that afternoon, she went and she had a complete makeover. She had a facial, she had new makeup, she had her hair dyed,
Wow.
she had new clothes. On the Monday, she called her school from where she'd been absent from school for a number of years. She called her old school, she asked for her place back, and she started back at school. On the Thursday night, she played the guitar and sang at an open mic night at her local pub, and that was the end of her journey. And I swear to you, it was no more than an hour and a half. And if you go to the website, as I say, the lindencentre.org, and which is our UK website for our centre, and have a look at the video on the children's page, she'll tell her own story. She sat in front of the camera and she told her own story without any prompting. There's no editing. You can see it's completely unscripted, and she tells her story. And it just touched my heart. From that, she's helped thousands of children.
Did this take for this person that you're talking about
to recover?
Yeah.
For her to recover, how many months?
Approximately.
A week.
About.
I swear to you. She on that Saturday morning, she listened, she heard, she understood, and she deactivated. And on the Monday, she started the program properly, and there you go.
It can take longer, right? I don't mean to interrupt you, I'm sorry, but with some people, it can take longer, though. You do say that, right?
Yeah, I do, because it's all down to the person. The thing is, it's like learning to play the guitar. It's a similar process. It has to become autonomic. You know, eventually you get to the point where your fingers know where they have to go, and you know how to strum. You don't think about it. It becomes complete. It's like learning a language. It all becomes autonomic. You don't have to think when you're speaking French. You don't have to think, what's the word for car? What's the word for drive? What's the word for road? It just comes automatically. I speak German, and it just comes automatically. You don't have to think about it. You respond without thought, and it's the same with anxiety recovery. If people do as they're told, they will learn to play the guitar in 2 months. They can be very proficient. Maybe 2 weeks if they're playing 5-6 hours a day. It's all about time. It's about the passage of time and the level of compliance to the rules. And it's the same with the Linden Method program. If you do it exactly how I tell you to do it, and you do it with compliance on a daily basis, the immediate emotional response can be immediate, and you can become very much less anxious overnight or in 2 or 3 days maximum. But the process can take longer if you're not putting the practice in. You have to convince your subconscious that the way you're leading your life is the new way that you're going to be permanently. And eventually your brain will say, okay, now I understand this now. I'm not going to be that way anymore. I'm going to be this way. Because not only is it easier, but it's a much more efficient way of living my life. And it doesn't require all of this emotion that is just unnecessary. So your brain will always go back towards the preset. But with anxious people, what they do every day, Jordan, is they wake up and they practice being anxious. And that's exacerbated by taking medication, because when you swallow that tablet, you're telling your subconscious that you have need to take the tablet. When you go and see the therapist, you're telling your subconscious that you have need to see the therapist. And then you talk about your anxiety. You rate your anxiety. You keep anxiety diaries. You try to change your conscious thoughts. All the time you're doing this, you're practicing being anxious. And people think it's supportive.
You're like putting a Band-Aid on it.
Yeah, if not,
right.
You're actually making it worse. Because the thing is, what you need to do is you need support that supports recovery, not that supports the anxiety. And constant reminders. It's like going through grieving. If you're constantly reminded every day that Granddad has died, you'll never go through the grieving process successfully. Grieving happens, and the whole bereavement happens as a process because there's a start and a finish. On the day one, it's catastrophic and it's awful and it's emotional and it's overwhelming. But on day 365, because of the passage of time and the loss of the conscious memory of that loss and of the emotional response to that loss, with the passage of time, the emotions slope off. It's very
Absolutely,
simple.
and you would agree that the person that is using your product, they must have belief, 110% belief in you and your program, because once they secure that belief, they can move on because they have the trust, knowing A, you've been through it, B, it works with thousands and thousands of people. Is that correct?
To an extent, that's true. Yeah, to an extent, that's true. I don't know. People have asked me this in the past. I don't think that people have to believe. This isn't a faith issue. faith kind of depends on chance and on on just the blind belief. That's what faith is. It's kind of it's belief in the absence of evidence. But the thing is with this is whether we look at our trial evidence, which showed 100% success rate at removing anxiety disorders, the average success in our trials, our Copenhagen University trial was that everybody recovered. That was the average success. Everybody recovered. And so I think faith is a funny thing, because faith does have this prerequisite that it's kind of blind, that it's just you just have to place your trust. With this, because it's like I said before, it's like practicing guitar. If you practice enough, you will become a guitarist. There's no sort of out route. There's no failure built into it, because as long as you're doing the strumming and playing the chords and using your hands effectively, you will become a guitarist. In the same way as, for example, eating satisfies hunger. It's a physical process. You can't help it. If you're hungry and you eat a burger, your hunger will be satisfied. It may come back and you may have to eat something else. But in that instant, the physical process is eating satisfies hunger. And that's how we survive. That's how we know we need fuel, because we feel hungry. And it's the same process with this. You don't necessarily have to believe in it. You just have to do it. You just have to do
Absolutely.
it. It's as simple as that.
I do have a question from you from Facebook. Lady Gail writes in, I have a daughter that suffers with anxiety. How much of this anxiety does the family take out on it? I guess she's saying, in essence, she's blaming herself that her daughter, her 13-year-old daughter, is suffering and struggling. And, she said it must have came from my family. In essence, she's what she's writing to me. And what would you say to that?
Jordan, nobody, no parent or nobody within a family group should take responsibility for another person's anxiety. Like I said earlier, to suffer from an anxiety disorder, there has to be a specific genetic marker. Now, it could be, I called it creative intellect earlier. I said about intellect. The thing is that, as parents, we pass a lot of genetic material on to our children. And with my wife and I, we combined our genetic material to produce Charlie and Florence, my daughter and my son. And what we handed to them, we couldn't control what was handed to them. We knew it was coming from us, but we couldn't control in what levels each of us gave them that genetic material. So, for example, Beth is not very creative. She knows she isn't. She can't draw. She can't paint. She's not musical. She's not great with interior design. She knows she's not. She admits it. She can't visualize things. Now, on the other hand, there's me. I went to art school. I can draw. I can paint. I can create music. I can create words. I'm a very creative person. So my children, obviously, it was a little bit of a thing going on. How are they going to turn out? Are they going to turn out like Beth? Are they going to turn out like me? Are they going to turn out as a combination of both of us? And as it happens, both of them are kind of pretty much me. I mean, Charlie wants to be an architect. He's very creative. Florence can draw things like you've never seen before, and she's very musical. So but it's a kind of it's not necessarily a lottery. But, this lady on Facebook is obviously taking a lot of responsibility for her child's anxiety. Now, it could be that the environment they live in is anxiety-provoking. But the only people that will develop an anxiety disorder are those that have that predisposition. And it's the same with soldiers going to war. You could have two soldiers of the same age, from the same background, the same education, going out in the same platoon to Afghanistan, and one of them comes back with PTSD, and the other comes back perfectly normally and goes back into Civvy Street without an issue. What's the difference between them? One of them has this predisposition, and the other doesn't. And it's the same with children. But you've got to look at it this way. You must look at it this way. Anybody who has that predisposition to suffering from an anxiety disorder also has the gift. And the thing is, just because that gift is currently being used by anxiety to make their life negative and negatively impactful and to produce all these symptoms, doesn't mean that can't be switched back to something really productive. Because all of my clients, without exception, all those ones that recover, and the vast majority of them, when they comply, go on to be absolutely incredible, because they repurpose all of that stuff, all that resource that the anxiety is using, gets repurposed and produces amazing people. We've had people go from being I mean, we had a guy that was a refuse collector in the UK, 56 years of age, and he recovered. His dyslexia was cleared up. He became more intelligent and more focused, and he did a degree in psychology, and he's now a lecturer in psychology. It took him 6 years to get there, but he did it. I mean, because he finally, at the age of 56, he knew what to do to reuse all of that intellect in the correct way, to get rid of his anxiety disorder and to become the successful person he can be. And this is one example out of tens of thousands of people we've cured. And you'll find them on Facebook. Go on Facebook and look at the testimonials on one of my Facebook pages. You can see them all grabbed from Facebook. I did this last year. It's changed my life. I did this, and my life has turned around. I'm a fantastic parent. There's thousands of them, thousands of people.
It's amazing. Yes.
It's amazing. It is amazing.
You know, I wanted to ask you. Yes, and before I started your program, I want to ask you about one of my triggers. I'm going back to when I was in the 8th grade, about 15, 16, 17 years ago. We, here in New York, got cable TV a bit later. So at this time, my mom and dad decided to get a, quote, illegal box. When I say illegal, it was not really like nobody would care. Like, it's not something that anybody would worry about. I mean, it would really take effort to get in trouble. However, Charles, I began to get severe panic attacks by having it in the house. Mind you, I'm in 8th grade. I'm getting heart palpitations. P.S. I get to we have it about 3 months. I can't explain it. I don't know what's going on, but I know it's that cable box that's sitting in my house that's driving me up the wall. I'm going to school back and forth. So, P.S., I tell my mom, please, before I start camp, can you please get rid of this cable box? I don't care if I have 10 channels instead of 30 channels. But I was so scared. But I knew deep consciously that it was no police were going to show over my house. I knew all these thoughts were bogus. But yet, they still continued in terms of anxiety, panic attacks. Have you ever heard of such a story or something like that?
Absolutely. I mean, as you know,
really?
I do residential retreats. Yeah. Honestly, I can put your mind at rest. I can tell you exactly where this is coming from. You know, we've done hundreds of our anxiety recovery retreats now. So, and I also, as you know, practice privately in London and in various places. And I do, as you know, fly around the world sometimes to help people all over the place. In LA and New York, and all over the place. And I have a huge amount of experience speaking 1-to-1 and 1-to-5 and 1-to-10 and 1-to-20 to thousands and thousands of anxiety sufferers over the years. And
it
never ceases to amaze. I've seen it. I think I've probably heard or seen it all. And it never ceases to amaze me, the variety and the wonderfulness of the anxious obsessions of people. And a lot of people, for example, I mean, pure O is categorized as an anxiety disorder. It's not. Pure O are inappropriate thoughts. They're risk assessments. They're just the normal risk assessments of anxiety. And pure O manifests mainly as inappropriate thoughts about hurting somebody, sexual thoughts, homosexual thoughts, religious thoughts, existentialist thoughts. So these people, I mean, the variety of thoughts I've heard around this are just incredible. And then you've got the people who focus on total risk. Now, that could be, like you say, it could be a faulty boiler in a house that's going to give off carbon monoxide. It could be, an illegal substance in the house or an illegal object. It could be, my dad's going to die when he's at work. My mum's going to have a heart attack. I saw something on TV about poltergeists. I think I may have one. I had a woman that was a school teacher. What if I'm a spider? She knew it was crazy. She said, I know I'm human, but what if I'm a spider? I said, but you're not a spider. She said, I know that. She said, but what if I am? It was a risk assessment. Of course, it was a what if I'm a spider? And she joked about it. She thought it was funny. But, I had another lady who was checking behind postage stamps to make sure she hadn't sealed somebody behind postage stamps. Now, she knew that postage stamps weren't big. She made her husband take every tile off the newly tiled bathroom to check behind every tile to make sure there weren't people behind them. And then she filmed him putting them back on again to make sure he didn't put people back behind them. Now, this is a sensible, intelligent woman who was actually working as a university professor who thought that she might tile somebody in behind her tiles. She knew it was impossible, and yet her anxiety told her it was possible. and that there are a million wild and wonderful stories I've heard about people who will risk assess and create catastrophe out of the simplest and sometimes the silliest things.
That's a very good word for catastrophe. Yes.
It is catastrophizing. You knew that the worst case scenario, you get a $20 fine for having an illegal, satellite box in your house or whatever. Yeah. But you were catastrophizing. You were seeing yourself. You're seeing your parents in prison, seeing them penniless, seeing that you're not being able to get food or be nurtured.
It was almost like alone. I was committing murder. It almost like
Absolutely
I was committing murder.
And the thing is, Jordan, we have people in the retreats or people in private practice. We have men and women in their 60s who come to us and they say, I'm having terrible thoughts about my grandchildren. And I know what they are before they even say it. And I'll say, okay, are these thoughts about harming them or doing something sexual to them? Oh, Charles, you've heard this before. 1,000,000 times, chap. I've had thousands of people sat in front of me saying, oh, my God, I've had to move out of my home because of the thoughts I'm having about harming my children or doing something sexually inappropriate to my children. And then we have the people that come to us saying, Charles, I know I'm straight, but I keep thinking I might be gay. And every man that walks in, I look at them and I imagine myself doing things to them.
You have those too?
Yep. And we have gay people come to us saying, I have these inappropriate thoughts about doing things with straight people, about doing people, I have a gay man sat there saying, I have these thoughts about doing things with women. But I know I'm gay. I know I'm not heterosexual. I'm homosexual. I know I am. And yet I'm having these inappropriate thoughts. They're risk assessments. What's the worst case scenario?
Is that denial? Is that denial in some cases? Could it be that they don't want to face that they're gay? And is that possible?
I've never had that happen. Never had that happen. In all the years, no. Never had that happen. I've never had somebody come to me and say, do you know what, I'm having these thoughts about being gay. And you say to them, okay, so are you gay? Well, no, I like women. Well, in that case, then you're not gay. No, I'm not. But I think, what if I am gay? You see, what if risk assessments in anxiety disorders always go to the worst case scenario? They never go to the most likely thing.
Right.
And that's
yes, I can speak to that too. Do you have ever kids that were bullied either from being gay or just being bullied and they developed anxiety even though the bullying was long done?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And sexuality is just one of the things that they're bullied about, just one of the things that is causing them to be. We do get a lot of gay men and women come to us saying, I struggled about coming out, about telling my parents, about telling my siblings, and so that caused me stress and I've got anxiety because of that. No. You've got anxiety because you had a predisposition to developing anxiety. The struggle with your sexuality was just the catalyst for this high anxiety. It's
so
the same
if somebody
in every
came
case.
to you and they said, I have this sexual problem, my thinking is sexually wrong, would you be able to help that type of person?
I would definitely sit down with them and I would discuss with them what kind of thoughts they were having. And I would discuss with them how they feel they should act on those thoughts or if they would act on those thoughts. And I would discuss with them what their anxiety levels are like. And I would discover, or one of our specialists would sit down and always discover exactly what the intent is behind the thoughts and whether that person is suffering from an anxiety disorder. Because I've never found a case in all the years where an anxious person has been having those thoughts and they've actually been intentful thoughts or they've been thoughts that have been appropriate. I've never had a heterosexual man turn out to be gay because his thoughts were focused on that. And I've never had a gay person, or man or woman, have the same. Yeah, no, you're either gay, you're straight. The thing is, it's genetic. You're born that way. Whether we talk about sexuality,
right.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I am having helped thousands of people. I'm absolutely convinced that sexuality is a sliding scale. You're either overtly male or you're overtly female, and your sexuality is somewhere in the middle, and it depends which way you sway. I mean, a lot of my friends call me the gayest straight man they know, and it's absolutely true. Whilst I know I'm absolutely heterosexual, they say I am in my attributes, in my interests, and in my thoughts, and in my ability to communicate, and in the way I dress, and the way I look, and the way I present myself. I'm actually quite gay. And so I know I swing towards, the female end of the sexual scale, if you like, the scale of sexuality. And we all do. We're either extremely male, extremely female, or somewhere in the middle. And so
now,
when I
somewhere
have people
in the middle,
come to me, it's easy to assess. It's really easy to assess usually.
Now, yes, but somewhere in the middle is considered bisexual. Have you ever had those type of clients?
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, we've had them at the retreat, and I've had them in private practice. And I mean, actually, do you know what's really strange, though, Jordan? Bisexuality is more common than people would imagine. And I believe that that's because, like you say, it's a swinging scale, and it's somewhere in the middle. The lines become more blurred. But it's the same with every physical or genetic attribute a person has. Just because it depends whether it manifests as emotion or whether it's to do with your physical prowess. So sporting prowess, you could be extremely sporting or extremely unsporting, and then there's people in the middle that sway around the middle that are kind of just normal people. You could say that about any attribute in humanity, and I just don't believe that there's a benchmark for humanity. I believe that we're all born the way we are, and that's the way it is, and it's all normal. It's all normal. No matter where you are.
This might be off the topic a little, but as here in the U.S., they passed a bill where everybody can get married. What's your thoughts on that? Do you have that in the UK?
Yeah, we do. And the thing, damn right they should be able to get married. Whoever said that only men and women can get married? It's craziness. If you love somebody and you're committed to somebody, you should be able to marry them. It doesn't matter what color, size, creed, I'd be very happy if Beth and I were ever divorced, and I had a good friend that that I loved and cared for. It wouldn't be a sexual issue. I could cohabitate with a man very happily. It's not about that. It's about living your life as you're meant to be. And I believe.
But what if one of your children came to you and they said, "Dad, I'm interested in the same sex"? How would that make you feel as a father? Would that be a little different?
Do you know what?
Obviously, it would be a little different because it's.
I'm asked this very often, about a variety of things, Jordan. And the thing is, I don't even consider it. It's when people say to me, when somebody confronts you that's a certain race or creed or sexuality, or I don't even see it. Everybody's human to me and always has been. I genuinely don't see that. And if one of my children had a sexual preference, it wouldn't affect me in the slightest.
Or is that you coming from the UK, maybe speaking? Is it more of a culture being gay, like more acceptance? There's some doubt, you know what I mean, here in New York.
Of course there is.
Those people who have their prejudice and the Bible and, this and that,
But Jordan,
could it be that?
I had this conversation with somebody the other day, that society, human beings haven't evolved that quickly. So socially, we've evolved relatively quickly over the last 100 years because we've had to meet with, to sort of to be able to interact with the modern world in the way that we do. But physically, we haven't changed that much. We haven't evolved that quickly. In fact, in some cases, there are elements that are de-evolving as we lead more supported lives. And the thing is, socially, what was socially acceptable, let's even say 1,000 or 2,000 years ago, in quite civilized society, today we would really,
That's right.
veer away from.
Look at it
I mean,
right.
And we would. And the thing is, in Roman times, for example, in certain elements of society, homosexuality was actually encouraged, because
really?
it was seen as a positive attribute. And so it's only social evolution and probably a lot to do with religion, I would say, and social conditioning through religion and through the beliefs and the kind of social beliefs that religion has created. I believe that we've been indoctrinated as a species into believing certain things to be true, and there are so many things that you could prove to be false that people generally go around their lives believing to be true. And I just believe that we will go back. I hope that we'll go back to understanding that there's a common there's a kind of a predisposition of humanity, like a benchmark, where we all go back and we just become accepting we live and let live, and we love and let love, and we be. Because being is the most important thing in the world. All of the nonsense that goes on politically and financially, and in terms of, the way that we interact as humans, in every sense, is just a nonsense. It's a construct. It's just a result of a lot of people having a lot of varied views and enforcing those views on other people. The truth is, we are human animals. We are animals, and we should be living together in packs, as units, and living in absolute, allowing ourselves to be, just to be, without all of these social constraints. And just, it just frustrates me massively when they talk too much. People talk too much. They say too much stuff, and often then regret it. If we could just be allowed to sit looking into each other's eyes, I always think it's a good thing. If two people are in conflict, if you sit them opposite each other and make them hold their hands and put their faces a foot or 2 feet apart and and allow them to stare into their eyes for long enough, eventually the truth is found. The truth will be found. Their emotions will break down, their physical selves will break down, and they'll just look at each other and see each other for what they are. And that's what life should be about, I believe. I do, honestly. I believe that's what life is all about.
But I want to talk to you about what you call the Holy Grail in your program, and I want to tell you my story about it first. In 2009, I had my best friend. He would read back to me a pillar every day or every other day, and, it almost felt like by the time 4 weeks were done, or whatever it was around that time, that I was hypnotized into change of life, change of thinking. When your thought wants to go to A, it goes to B. I found the best. These are those 9 pillars. Your thoughts?
Well, the pillars are the, if you call the process driving a car down the street, so if you call the Linden Method process the structure driving a car down the street, there are many people that can drive cars, but they don't necessarily know the highway code. They don't know the signs. They don't know how to avoid obstacles. They don't know how to use the indicators correctly or apply the brakes correctly. Just being able to drive a vehicle doesn't mean you're safe on the road. And so the pillars, if you like, are the highway code. They're the rules that you apply to the day structure to make yourself compliant, to make yourself, to allow the recovery process to happen. And so if you go through the pillars on a daily basis and you live them as if they're the rules of life, then they can be very powerful within the recovery process. So I'd say, like I said to you earlier, the method is multifaceted, and whilst it's simple, it's very clear and it's constructed to be clear and to be concise and to be able to be implemented very simply into people's lives, regardless of their academic ability or their ability to read or write or to their level of experience in the world. So once you've got the day structure correct and you apply the pillars correctly, and then you use, if you need to, the support facilities or email or telephone support so that you can fine-tune it, recovery happens very, very quickly. But you have to do it correctly.
Yes,
so you're doing the right thing there.
And there was just one time that all I need to hear was 2 words from your staff back in 2009, and you know what? I felt better. I just needed to hear these words: "You'll be okay." When the person who got done saying that, after I was having a little hiccup, as they called it, it was amazing. After the person in your program said to me, "You will be okay. Everything's going to be okay." For some reason, I got right back on track, and I was fine. Have you ever heard this story? And can you explain why just those 3 words helped me get back to myself?
I think, Jordan, we've been around for 19 years, and we've helped, with the home learning program alone, about 180,000 people. So it's a lot of people. And on top of that, we have the residential retreats. Obviously, we have various access points. Now we've got the LAR coaching. We have a lot of experience helping anxious people to recover, and we have the experience to know that people will recover if they do as they're told. And so failure isn't, when people say to me, "Charles, I'm going to try," The word try always, for me, it sets them up for failure. It always says to me, I'm going to do whatever I can, but there's always that niggling doubt that it's not going to work. So I'm going to reserve the right to fail. People fail. The process doesn't fail, ever. And I can honestly say, hand on heart, I have never, ever seen anybody do this correctly and for it to fail, because it can't fail. Like eating satisfies hunger, this can't fail if you do it, because that's just the way the brain and body work. So when somebody who has massive experience, and I mean tens of thousands of hours helping tens of thousands of people to actually recover, when they say to you, you will recover, you're inclined to believe them. And I always say to people, we get a lot of people through social media say to us, I'm sure that you may have seen them at some point, they'll say things like, yes, but my cognitive behavioral therapist told me I would recover. My doctor told me I'd recover if I took the medication. My hypnotherapist told me I'd recover, and I didn't recover. Right. Well, that's because what they did didn't work, because what they did didn't create recovery. They didn't give you a burger for hunger. They gave you a peanut. They gave you something that was never going to, cause you to. Everybody has to take from this process. It's like eating a buffet. You and I are in a car on the way to a wedding, and I say, oh, Jordan, I hope they've got some good food there because, I'm starving. I could eat a horse. And you say, yeah, me too. And we arrive there and they have, little vol au vents and a couple of little cocktail sausages. And we look at it and we say, we're going to have to eat all of that to satisfy our hunger. The point is that the recovery process is about taking what you need from the buffet of life. It's not about taking, using like psychotherapy or medication to cope. It's not about management. It's not about coping strategy. It's about recovery. It's about completely removing the anxiety disorder. So you have to do it in a set process. You have to do it how we tell you to do it. But when you do it, you recover. And when I'm sat, whether I'm sat in a mansion in Beverly Hills talking to a client and looking at them thinking, I can't believe I'm sat in front of you, or whether I'm talking to a child in a school in the north of England, or whether I'm speaking to a 72-year-old woman in sheltered housing, or whether I'm talking to a person who's been long-term unemployed in central London, and and I've been employed by this government organisation to get them back into work because they're agoraphobic, or whether I'm talking to somebody who's come from New York or New Zealand to one of the retreats. The story is the same in every case. When they do as we tell them to do, they recover. Fact. It isn't about belief. It isn't about their ability to do it, physical ability or psychological ability. It's just about doing it, and it's so simple, so simple.
Yes, indeed it is. And one of the things that I really liked, and I'm speaking also as a client, but I must be truthful, is the 3 tracks where you talk. Now, there was a period where I almost went about 2 years where I had it on a CD, and I used to let it play, like first the 3 tracks with you talking on it, and then the music part. I would never make it to falling asleep. Those are some very
productive and not boring.
Definitely not boring. And there's a piece in there where I really like, because you really get at somebody suffering when you go, quote, something like, if you're suffering from any anxiety, put it to the side and let it go, and words to that effect. And it's so much, it's so much I can relate to that I was never able to relate to. It's almost like you knew exactly, like you were talking to me. So I was able to visualize from that program. Now, if you want to tell the audience exactly what I'm talking about, you sure can.
Yeah, I mean, Jordan, the thing is, like I said to you earlier, we're a kind of strange fraternity within humanity. Anxiety sufferers and ex-anxiety sufferers are, as I say, a distinct group in society. And the thing is that we are programmed in the same way. And so when, for example, the retreat guests come to our retreats, they make friends for life. And then they go on to join our Facebook group, our private Facebook group for ex-retreaters, as we call them, and they get to make more friends because we are a very distinct group. And the reason for that is very simple. We are physiologically and psychologically set up in the same way Despite our differences, our age, our gender, our race, our life experiences, despite all those things, truth is we're the same person in different bodies. We're programmed in the same way. And so there's a deep level of understanding. And the way I've always come at helping sufferers through the products and whether it's through the TV programs or through my videos or through whatever media I use, is it all comes from my heart. And my heart is your heart, because I am you. I'm just a different version of you. And so when I talk about anxiety and I talk about the experiences of OCD, of health anxiety, of PTSD, of panic disorder, of agoraphobia, of derealization and depersonalization, of pure O, of the obsessive and phobic thoughts that anxiety sufferers experience each day, it's because I have a deep knowledge of it, because I had 27 years of it. I know it from the inside. I know it systemically. I know it as if it's part of my body. And when I talk about it, it's still there. The understanding, the deep understanding and the deep experience of that is still in me. What isn't there is the experience of it, because I no longer suffer. I'm not an anxiety disorder sufferer. I'm anxiety-free.
That's
and always
another
will be.
thing people say. The word is that you cannot be cured. That's what a lot of doctors say, but you can be, quote, you could learn to live with it. What is your opinion about doctors that say that?
They haven't got a clue what they're talking about. They haven't got a clue.
Don't hold back now.
Well, no, Jordan, it's all in the definitions. The thing is, they talk about anxiety as if anxiety is normal and expected. They talk about anxiety as if anxiety is an emotion. There is no emotion called anxiety. There's an emotion called fear. And like I said earlier, we all need fear. We should only have fear. We should never have anxiety. Like we all need to defecate. None of us need diarrhea. It's the same thing. Right. It's exactly the same thing. So when you go to a doctor or when you hear people speaking, generally, when they say, "Oh, that made me very anxious," that made I had to do a speech at work and it made me anxious. Yes. It made you fearful. It didn't make you anxious. Only anxiety sufferers suffer from anxiety. It only makes them anxious. Normal people with without the predisposition, they only suffer from fear, and sometimes that fear can be quite overwhelming. But it's not anxiety. Anxiety is a condition that can be cured. Fear can't be cured. You cannot remove the emotion of fear from your brain unless you do it surgically. You can remove anxiety, and you can remove it permanently, because what you can do is not only get rid of the disorder, but you can set your neurology up to recognize and deal with fear-provoking situations appropriately, so that you never, ever redevelop an anxiety disorder. None of my anxious people have ever gone back. People we've cured never go back to suffering from anxiety, ever. There's not been one case, ever, because they're cured.
Now, there is one big thing that a lot of people are proud of your program, is that you don't encourage medication. Two-part question. If they're on medication for whatever time, some 5 to 10, maybe 20 years, some people, and they're just going to start your program, A, how would they get off? B, why do you feel that it's relevant not to be on medication? Go ahead. Give me your thoughts on that.
Jordan, there are people out there in the world that have mental illness who require medication. There's no doubt. People that, for example, that suffer from manic depression or bipolar disorder, they may need lithium. I can't reach inside somebody's head and tell them what they need, biologically, chemically. But the point is this: every person on this planet, unless they're born with some kind of physiological deficit, something that was genetically pre-programmed into them, and obviously we know that a lot of people are born with issues that arise from genetic problems or from birth problems, developmental problems. But other than that, well humans are born in physical and mental equilibrium. Yes, they may be born kicking and screaming and emotionally distraught because they've just been through birth, but that should reset itself very quickly after birth, and people should be able to live in relative physical and mental equilibrium so that they are effective and efficient and go through life responding appropriately and dealing with substance and data that enters their body in the right way, so that they never become affected by that substance and data. Now, again, we both know that, through alcohol, through illicit substances, through the air we breathe, sometimes the things that we ingest, our bodies don't always respond as we want them to respond and may be affected by those things long term. But if you live a relatively healthy life, you should be able to go back to that same healthy equilibrium that you were born with. So my point is this, there's never been a drug synthesized, in my opinion, that was, anxiolytic drugs, antidepressant drugs. They're all used for controlling anxiety. But anxiety is the inappropriate manifestation of the emotion of fear. So if we can get that inappropriate manifestation back to being fear and not anxiety, so that we have normal emotional responses, especially fear responses, then we shouldn't require any intervention. We shouldn't require psychotherapy, medication, or anything else. But there are a lot of conditions in the mental health field that do require medication because they are caused by chemical imbalance. But anxiety isn't one of those things. So if somebody comes to us and they're taking medication, I say to them, stay on your medication. Stay at the same dose. Take it regularly. Do the method. See if the method cures your anxiety, which it undoubtedly will if you do it correctly, and then decide what to do about the medication. Because the medication's kind of inconsequential during recovery. I wouldn't say to somebody, stop taking your medication any more than I'd say to somebody, stop smoking or stop drinking or anything else. I would say do everything in moderation and do it with regularity so your body knows what to expect and when to expect it, so that you can build some equilibrium into it regardless of what you're doing. And then off that foundation, build recovery. And once you've recovered, then decide what to do. And I'd say the same if somebody was asking me the same question about divorcing their husband or their wife, or leaving their job, or moving from one county to the next. I'd say get yourself anxiety-free, then make the decision.
That is interesting because they're both relevant questions. There's a comparison. But I was watching Donald Trump with my mom the other day, and I see a guy with such balls, excuse my language, and he just gets on the podium. And me and my mom would joke around because, I have OCD and I had it, or whatever you want to call it. But we laugh and we say, some of the things that he said, it's not possible that he could ever be born like that with or ever get anxiety. What's your thoughts on a guy like Donald Trump and anxiety?
Well, you know what, Jordan? I've helped men. For example, I helped a university professor who was actually a psychologist who used to teach anxiety recovery as part of the courses at university, and yet he suffered chronically with anxiety. Yeah, and the thing is, this guy, if his wife said, let's go out for a meal with some friends, he'd have a panic attack. But during his school days at the university, he would stand on a podium and speak to 1,000 people very happily and not feel anxious
and make sarcastic jokes.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
confrontational.
And the thing is that we're all different. We're all built differently. We all have our predispositions. And the thing is, whilst I wouldn't enjoy standing on a stage talking to 2,000 people because I don't like being put on the stage like that. I'm actually a relatively shy person. I'm not the person people perceive me to be. I don't like being the center of attention. Yeah, I mean, I love talking about what I do. I love helping, but I could never be a politician. It's just not something I enjoy doing. Public speaking isn't my thing, let's say. But
you could be after you were cured, theoretically, but you don't want to be that. Correct. That's what you're saying, right?
I make choices now based on what I want. Yeah. Right.
But there was no way and chance you could have done anything like this before 1997. Is that accurate?
Well, Jordan, earlier on I told you where I'm sitting now. I'm actually sitting in the garden of a house in Mallorca in Spain. There was a time, a long period of time when I was that anxious that A, I wouldn't have got on a plane. B, you wouldn't have got me to the airport because I was agoraphobic. C, you wouldn't have got me down my driveway because I was agoraphobic. There was one point at which Beth used to come home from work, drive 7 miles home at lunchtime to take me to the toilet to pee because I thought if I stood up I'd die.
How did with that problem which I had as a child? How did you manage to get yourself a nice girlfriend with the torture that you were enduring? I mean, she must be one understanding lady to have to deal with what you and me went through at one point. Can you explain?
Absolutely right, yeah. I mean, the thing is, I think because I had 27 years of it, and because I became very practiced at hiding how I was, and because I was able to kind of manipulate my environment, anxiety sufferers become very good at manipulating people and places and things.
It's the best.
I have people, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of people who are chronically anxious and nobody knows. Or there are people that, the close family know, but nobody else knows. There are people in very high positions. I know some very, very famous actors who are currently on TV around the world who suffer chronically with anxiety disorders.
They're on your website, too. Some have
there are a few. I've helped hundreds, if not thousands, of sports people, celebrities, musicians, artists of all kinds, whether they're musical artists or artists, painters. I've
there are
helped
a lot
TV,
of people
movie stars.
Can't sleep. These artists. Could you help people sleep? Is there treatment in your program?
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, insomnia is often anxiety related. It's often either physiologically they can't sleep because their body feels alive, and it's called hypervigilance. When you're anxious, it's called hypervigilance. So all of your senses are ready for looking for, identifying anxiety catalysts and dealing with them. So a lot of people can't sleep because of that. Some people can't sleep because their heart's racing, or they can hear their heartbeat in their neck or their head. Or some people can't sleep because they just get the racing thoughts.
Michael Jackson, who was very creative and would have such thoughts of music and what I'm going to make and this and my audience at the tour, that when you're so creative and you're so, genius like that, it actually stops you from sleeping if you don't have the right method. Do you think it would have been possible? We know that there was some issues that he used drugs, and he used the drug that knocked him out to get him to sleep. Unfortunately, the doctor that was taking care of him did not have presence of mind to use a simple EKG machine. But that's another story. But do you think you could get through to a person suffering with that creative artist that they're thinking so much, they're excited, and you know what I'm talking about, right?
Absolutely, because what you do is I would position them to change the way that they structure their day and structure their thoughts and structure the way they use all of that intellectual prowess, if you want to call it that. And I would help them to get that equilibrium back in their life, in every aspect of their life. So I've helped a lot of people do that. I mean, we get a lot of calls. For example, I get calls. I do a lot of troubleshooting. So say a studio will phone and they'll say, we've been working with this particular artist or this particular actor, and 2 days ago they had to leave the set because they had a panic attack, and they haven't left their trailer since, and we need some quick intervention. And I'll step in to do stuff like that. And it doesn't take that long. I do a lot of it. In fact, in the UK especially, I've done stuff. So I'll sit backstage and I'll see a number of artists or a number of actors or a number of presenters or producers or CEOs or management of a particular company, and I just sit and I see maybe 3 or 4 in the day and do troubleshooting with their issues, because those people are the people who suffer, the people who have that incredible intellect.
Like Billy Joel, a singer from the U.S., he actually talked and he named the song "Why Do I Go to Extremes?" Too high or too low, and he admits that he's a sufferer of being anxiety, but he's so brilliant, and it's amazing that these are the people, I guess, the chosen ones that get that.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. Absolutely right. And I mean, there's never been an exception. And when we run our retreats or when we run our workshops, when we see people in private practice, it's always very apparent, and it's almost like people say to me that when they meet me and they talk to me that they get the sense that I can reach inside their head and read their thoughts, and that's exactly what it is. I mean, I've lived this, I know it from the inside out, and it's just so clear to me. And very often I'll go to events, whether that's here or maybe abroad, and I'll listen to mental health professionals talk, or maybe I'll sit in a work group of some kind and listen to people talking, And it's immensely frustrating to me that how many people there are out there in the world that really don't understand the true nature of anxiety disorders and would prefer to think of mental illness and things that require, deep psychiatric intervention or medication, when actually it's not like that at all. These people suffer, and I'm sure there are people out there now listening to me thinking, oh yeah, but I'm different. I'm not the same. I'm not what Charles is talking about. I'm a different case. I'm the one he can't help.
Right.
I'm the one that can't do this. But that again is risk assessing. We have a lot of people who do the method and they say, oh, I've been doing it for 2 months and it hasn't worked. And then you talk to them about why it hasn't worked and you realize they're actually risk assessing the program. So they're not just doing it as they've been told to do it. They're actually saying, yeah, but what if it doesn't work? What if I don't do it the right way? What if I do? Charles told me to do this.
They're looking at it from a negative standpoint.
Totally.
Before they even
start risk assessing the positive
before
stuff.
they get on the boat. They're already saying it, right?
They're few and far between. It's not everybody, but it could be 2% of people do that. But when we put them on the straight and narrow, when we explain to them what they're doing, they go, yeah, I can see exactly what I've been doing now. How crazy.
One thing that caught me to you
I'll change it.
was you made the YouTube video, and it was about 20 minutes or so, about 5-6 years ago, I think it was, maybe longer. But the point is, you were talking so much about your past, and you were just being yourself, and that's what I appreciated. And I said, wow, this is very interesting because, you lived through it. You're the average person that, would go down the street and nobody would think anything was ever wrong with you. And that, I think, is a very important factor in the Linden Method to me. And that's what I would definitely advise people to get their hands on it. Now, my audience that are listening now, what is how does the process work with the Linden Method? How would they start off, and just can you give a little background of the Linden Method, buying it and whatnot?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as you know, Jordan, over the years, we haven't put the price up. And the reason we haven't put the price up is because we want to make it as accessible as we can to everybody.
Oh, and there are some I've seen for hundreds and hundreds of dollars. They're outrageous prices. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
so we've always
you have
kept
stayed
the
the same?
Pretty much the same. Yeah, I think the price has gone up by about 10% in 10 years. Because, obviously we have to move with inflation. But the reason I do that is because I want to make it accessible to absolutely everybody. And whilst we can't give it away free of charge, I wish we could. And I hope the day comes when we can. Because people assume that they can just, look at the book, read the book, and listen to a CD maybe next Tuesday, and then it'll all work. It'll just happen. That's not the way it is. Each element of what we provide.
A cake, as you say. In many tapes, you have to bake the cake.
You need every
right.
ingredient. Yeah. And the thing is, you can't just take what you fancy taking out of it. You've got to do it as it's, as you're instructed to use it. So you do need every element there in case you need to access it. And so, the program is very easy to access. Like I've said to you already, we have residential retreats. I don't believe everybody needs to come to a residential retreat. I think that there are people who want to come to a retreat because they want to be immersed in it, and they want the experience of meeting me and maybe meeting the team and getting it straight from the horse's mouth, so that they absolutely understand what they've got to do, and in 4 days they turn their lives around. And I understand why people want to do that. And we have people travelling from all over the world to our retreats. We've got one, I think, the week after next, second week of September. We have people from New Zealand, America, South America, Saudi Arabia, come from all over the world to do those. Now, I understand that. And it is more expensive. It's around sort of $3,500. But having said that,
but you can't put a price tag on getting better. That's the other story.
No. Totally. And the thing is, you won't find anywhere that provides a curative process and then up to 12 months ongoing support to access for that kind of money. What we do is we provide a curative process. Now, we understand that people can't afford that. We have the home learning program. And again, the home learning program comes with constant unlimited support. So in other words, it's a 12-month program, but you can become anxiety-free in 2 weeks. So why do we offer 12 months membership? Well, because some people might not want to start it until next June. And I don't want people to get to next June and say, Charles said I could do this any time, and now there's no support. So we give them up to 12 months support. So whilst you only need 2 to 3 weeks support, maybe, and most people, don't use the support more than once or twice, it's there to access if you need it. So I'm offering people flexibility. I'm offering people, that sort of nurturing that they need. So they don't feel under pressure to use it straight away. They don't feel under pressure to make it happen within 2 days. They've got enough time to do it at their own pace and to feel comfortable. So what you get with the Linden Method Home Learning Program is you can either get a download version, which is basically an online version. You go online, you watch the videos, you can access the support, you can send emails, you can phone the centre, all from within a sort of, digital online portal, if you like. Or there's a printed version, which is CDs, DVDs, and a printed book, which gets sent to your home under plain cover. It arrives, you open it, you follow the instructions, and you start to do it, and it starts to work straight away. And we've had people buy that, access it immediately. Everybody who buys the printed version gets the download version too, so they can immediately they purchase it, they can get access online immediately to all the resources and support. So if somebody goes off this program now, goes to a website, buys the Linden Method, within 5 minutes they'll be accessing the program material and they can start to see how it's going to work for them. So it's immediate, and access to the support is immediate too. In America, the printed version is $197, and that includes the unlimited support for up to 12 months. So access it when you want, use it at your own pace. And for the download version, it's $137. It's one payment. There aren't any follow-up payments. There's nothing else to pay for. You buy it, and if you want to start it next January, you start it next January. You can start using the support then. It's not an issue, but it's there.
In the U.S., they get the support for 1 year, and is it UK time that they must call, that they can't call?
Yeah. Most people use the email support, to be honest, Jordan, because I think it's just very accessible and they enjoy having it in printed form so they can reread it and understand it. The support staff are based in Europe, and the reason for that is simple, because despite the fact that I'm English and my office is in the UK, we have literally an equal spread of clients all around the world. And when I say all around the world, I mean literally from Australasia across to America and across the whole of Asia, Russia, Africa. So there is no one place where there's a cluster of our clients. We have about 9,500 current home learning clients spread equally across the world. And we had to make a decision.
So you translate it?
Support.
You have it translated?
Yep.
We do. The audio?
Yeah. We do. We have a Spanish version.
Wow.
We have a Spanish version. We have a German version.
Do you speak the Spanish? You speak
I don't
Spanish?
speak the Spanish. I do the German.
Oh, okay.
The German with me, but not the Spanish. No, that was somebody else.
How about Italy?
Spanish isn't up to spit. I haven't done that yet. We're moving on now. We're working with an organisation at the moment to get various language versions done, and we're working very hard to get there as quickly as we can. Obviously the support at the moment is offered in English, but we do have a lot of people, from around the world, even Russians and Polish and various people from across the Spanish nations who phone and do the support in English because it's very simple and they seem to get it and understand it, and the results are the same in every case. So, but we are moving around the world with various language versions.
And Charles, let me ask you: do you get? I know you do, but is it hard to deal with sometimes the criticism that comes with any company that anybody gets? But for you in particular, how do you deal with some things that might not be so positive towards you? Maybe it's social media, because you're a company, and when you're big, there are some people that aren't so nice, and so that you probably know what I'm talking about. How do you deal with that?
Yeah, of course. It's easy. We get somebody come onto social media. Fred from Dakota, South Dakota, and he'll say, I've been on the internet and I found some negative comments about you, and that's why I'm not going to do your program. Well, for me, it's not about being angry or upset at the people who make those comments. It's a sadness because obviously we have competitors. Obviously we have people out there, and we have them call us sometimes. What have you done to my client? I've been giving this person psychotherapy for 4 years and now they've disappeared. What have you done to them? Well, we've cured them. Isn't that what you wanted? I mean, the point is that we're not going to please everybody. There are going to be practitioners out there who rely on repeat business to survive, and I get that. But we can't help the fact that one of their clients has come to us and been cured or has moved forward with their life successfully, and so we are going to get criticism. Of course, we are. We're also going to get those clients who say, "I bought your program and it didn't work." Well, the point is, you may have bought my program or got it from somewhere, but the reason it didn't work isn't because the program was flawed. It was because you weren't compliant. You didn't do it. The human body is the human body. I've told you, if you do it correctly, it works. And so we can't be to blame for that. But also, you have to consider that if you go out there and you find, 100 people saying that the method is a con or a scam, or you find 1,000 people or 10,000 people, if you look at it in proportion to the amount of people we've actually helped, you'll see that it's a very small proportion. We've literally helped over 180,000 people with the home learning program. Then you've got the retreats, we've got the workshops, we've got the corporate programs, we've got the variety of other media that we provide, whether it's the Stress-Free in 30 Days book and CD, whether it's one of my other publications through Hay House, or we're talking tens of thousands of people. So I mean, I think through our resources have been accessed by something like 4 million people over the last 10 years. So if you look at the criticism,
4 million people, wow.
A minimum of 4 million people. I haven't got the figures in front of me. It was about 3.6 when I looked about a year ago. So I know it's millions of people.
Are you ever thinking of getting bigger? And now when I say bigger, would you ever consider maybe once a week having a meeting where you have maybe somebody from just as a hypothetical, of course, maybe years down the line, where they come once a week, everybody comes like an AA meeting or a Weight Watcher meeting or something like that. They come in, they give you a card, etc., and they talk for an hour and they leave. Would you ever consider something like that?
We have something like this, and I mentioned earlier about LAR coaching. As I said earlier, now people can train to become a professional practitioner as a Linden anxiety recovery coach, and that might sound a little bit strange, but the qualification we're talking about is equivalent to year one of a degree, so it's a professional qualification. So it would be the same as maybe setting up practice as a podiatrist or a psychotherapist or a physiotherapist, for example. So it's a very high-level qualification, and it's a professional qualification. And my dream is to have LAR practitioners literally everywhere where people need them. So I would love to see every school have an LAR practitioner who is equipped to identify and deal with anxiety before it becomes too invasive and too catastrophic for the sufferer. I'd like to see them in every school, every university, every police headquarters, every ambulance headquarters. Wherever there are people, I would like to see them. I'd like them to be in every clinic, private practice, in practice through national health services in the countries that have those services, so that people with anxiety disorders get immediate, appropriate, and curative advice and guidance as soon as it's available. And so my dream is to have thousands of LAR practitioners out there in the world. And so we've set up this an organisation called Linden Education, which is it's an NCFE accredited educational facility. And for those people who don't know what the NCFE is, it's actually the oldest examining board, the oldest accrediting body in the world. It's like it's an examining board, and so people can now get an NCFE level 4 qualification as a professional LAR coach, and they can do that remotely. So let's say, for example, you or somebody you know wants to be an LAR coach in New York. They can go online to the website and join the course. They can do it remotely. They can go. It's called Moodle. There's a Moodle portal where they can do a remote course and qualify online. Then they'll become an accredited coach. They'll get a practice certificate from us. They'll get an NCFE level 4 qualification from the NCFE directly. So they'll get a certificate for that as well. And then through guidance with us and working with us, they can set up their LAR coaching practice, and they can work, as I said, within any field, whether educational or healthcare or individually, or set up their own clinic or their own practice, and help people around the world to become anxiety-free. And it's our dream that those people are absolutely everywhere, so that you'll be able to phone up or go on our website and have a look at the practitioners within your area, in the New York area, and you'll be able to make a choice and say, okay, well, this one lives 10 blocks from me. This is the one I'd like to see. She looks nice. She looks like the kind of person I could relate to, and she's also an LAR practitioner. I'm going to go and see her, and then you go to your sessions with her, and you use the materials provided by us, and you have interim support from our central support team, so that in between sessions, you have somebody to turn to if you have a panic attack or if you feel unsure about something or you need some guidance or reassurance. And we're hoping to have literally thousands of those practitioners all around the world.
And how many years is that?
As soon as possible. My dream is to have 1,200 by the end of 2016 and then escalate that by 100% each year. So by the end of the second year, have maybe 3,000 to 5,000, 5,000 to 10,000 and so on. But I'd like it to be in every country, and I'd like it to be that every anxiety sufferer has that to turn to locally when they need it, regardless of where they're situated.
Oh, wow. Okay, a couple more things, then we'll let you go. Now, how important it is not to look back on the past. Sometimes I have a habit of sitting back and saying, my high school years weren't so kind, and I sit back and I get depressed and whatnot, and sometimes I'll even tell my mom, and she'll tell me to look at the positive things. In your opinion, because I've heard your tapes, how important it is to not concentrate on what happened in the past and just stay on the future and current?
Jordan, I think generally in life, for anybody, whether they're an anxiety sufferer or not, it's important to focus on the future, because what is done is done. We can't go back and change it. There's nothing we can do to influence it. The body is constantly changing. I think somebody has discovered that the cells in our body are completely replaced every 7 years, and we become a completely different person in effect every 7 years. And I think that is indicative. I mean, time is the only constant really, and the thing is, the passage of time is the only thing we don't have any control over. But it's also a fantastic tool. It's our ally, because it means that tomorrow we can wake up and reinvent ourselves. We have the ability, the capacity to move forward and become different people, to learn new things and to become the people we want to be. And so, retrospective thinking and looking back at those things that may be responsible, or assigning blame to things that have happened in our past is just a negatively influencing behaviour. It's just something that you don't need, you can't use successfully. It has no positive outcome. All it can ever do is give rise to, the negative emotions connected with that event. And that would be crazy, because, tomorrow's another day. You can be where you want to be, you can be who you want to be. Of course, we all have social constraints. I have kids and a wife to think about. I can't just up tomorrow and become a rancher in South Colorado or wherever. That would be craziness. I wouldn't do it, because it would be a nonsense in my life. However, our dream is to live in the US one day, because I think that it's the place that we should be. Yeah, absolutely. I think it's the place I was born to be in. So, but at the moment we reside in the UK and we move around. We move around a lot. But I know that one day we're going to end up in the US, because that's.
Have you ever been to the US?
I have, many times.
You've been to the US, right?
Yeah.
Much different.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it's.
What is Charles? Yes. What is Charles Linden's favorite dinner? We have to get that on the record. Yes.
My favorite dinner. Now, let me think about this. Do you know what? I mean, somebody asked me here the other day what my favorite food is. I love Spanish food, so I love a really good paella. I love a seafood paella. But I do I like good old English cooking as well. So I like my Sunday roast. But having said that, I'm relatively easy when it comes to food. I enjoy my food. I have a wheat intolerance, so I have to be a little bit careful. But yeah.
What is Charles Linden's favorite television program to watch?
Oh God, I've got so many. Oh yeah.
English or UK?
My favorite television actually is American programming. So I absolutely love comedy, Modern Family. I absolutely love
really
the West Wing. Yeah, all of the White Collar. Any of that
Did you used
stuff,
to watch
the
those
kind
sitcoms? The
Totally.
U.S. produced. Yes.
Of course. Yeah, I worked on the American bases in Germany for a number of years, so I became very Americanized, and I've got a lot of family in America as well. So yeah, it's good.
Does Charles Linden have a favorite sport?
Yeah, I do. Rugby.
Rugby.
I'd like to say basketball, because my son was headhunted for the British champion team, actually, for Worcester Wolves, and he plays for Worcester Wolves basketball team, and he's a fantastic little player, and I love it. So for spectator sport, basketball. As a player, rugby. Rugby was my sport.
And finally, it sounds like the children are very aware of what happened with you and your program and everything that's going on. And it sounds like you're very close with your children, and you hold nothing back in terms of what you do and what happened to you. Is that correct?
That's absolutely correct, yeah. No, I'm very honest with them and with everybody else about every aspect of what I experienced. Because, what's come to be very true over the years, Jordan, is the fact that, I've been able to help a lot of people to make sense of their lives and to move on with their lives and to actually feel fulfilled, anxiety-free, and happy. And if I have any skill at all, if I was given any kind of physical or mental attribute that I can use regularly, I believe it's my ability to reassure people and to educate people about these conditions. And I take that very seriously. My children take it very seriously, and they have great respect for me and the clients and full understanding of what anxiety disorders are and how they can affect people. I've never hidden that from them, and I wouldn't, because I think it's an important aspect of who I was, but also a very important aspect of the life around them, because they're very influenced by what I do. They're obviously quite visible. We don't hide them away, so people know who they are. They know what I do, and sometimes it's positive, sometimes it's negative. Kids can be cruel, and sometimes at school, if I've been in a newspaper or on a TV show, or they will get criticism or remarks from other kids for various reasons, and they have to tolerate that. There's no way of escaping it. So but what they usually do is suck it up and say, I'm very proud of my dad. I don't care what you think. And it works well. It's good.
Oh, really? They had that.
Oh, yeah. It's happened a lot. Yeah.
That is
because I think there are
pretty interesting.
It's always the same, though, isn't it? When people, if somebody opens a magazine and sees a picture of somebody, and then it's hard to know. Kids especially can be cruel.
I think it's natural for people to get jealous.
Yeah,
it's a jealous thing.
Yeah, it can be motivated by jealousy, but it can also be motivated by ignorance and just not really understanding why it is I'm in the paper. I think there was a thing on television recently where they asked a load of kids, what they want to do, and I remember there was a documentary when I was a kid where they would go into a school and say, what do you want to do with your life? And the kids would say, well, I want to be an accountant, or I want to be a doctor, or I want to be a football player, or I want to be an astronaut, and 90% of the children asked in this recent documentary, so they wanted to be famous. So I think the thing is, kids look at newspapers and assume the people that they see staring back at them are famous and are therefore earning a lot of money and having very easy lives, just having photographs taken. And I think the perception of that is massively damaging. And it becomes, incredibly apparent when you ask a child what it wants to be, and the child says, I want to be a famous person, and doesn't even know what they want to be famous for.
Right.
If I'm famous for anything, it's for writing self-help material and creating recoveries, and for, 100%. So I see that as a good thing. But it's certainly not for being drunk on TV or being in a game show, or, So I suppose.
Do you realize how much life? Are you proud of yourself? I sometimes say to myself, Sir Charles, I like to call you, because you're like an angel. I really do think you're an angel from.
Oh, Jordan.
And I mean it sincerely. Do you take? How does that make you feel when people from around the world tell you that you have helped them with their anxiety issues? Because it's a big thing. It really is.
Yeah,
there's not a lot out there.
No.
No,
I know.
There definitely wasn't a lot out there 20 years ago.
No.
It's only being talked about in the last decade.
Absolutely. And I mean, I hope I'm changing that. I hope I'm changing mental health. I hope I'm changing. I hope it all swings towards, doing the right thing and being and getting the right results from the right techniques and for everybody to benefit. I feel humbled by when people write to me or send me things that for example, just recently, if you look on Facebook, just recently, a few people have named their children after me, which I find.
Serious?
It's overwhelming. Yeah, I'm seriously.
That's like a rock star.
It's strange, but it's a wonderful. Oh, there was a guy on there the other day that was saying that he'd lost like 60 pounds and changed, and people have tattoos. When I see that stuff, it chokes me every time. It really does get me emotionally because to have that level of influence on somebody's life and to be able to help, it's an amazing thing. But it's really strange because it does feel kind of removed from me because I was the sufferer that is now helping people. So, it's been so many, and Beth often says to me, we're at a concert. I don't know whether you know the group Take That, the boy band, but we're at a concert at Manchester United's football ground about 2 years ago, and I think the crowd was something like 65,000 people, let's say, and we were stood with my children down on the field watching the concert, and she turned to me and she said this thing. She said, "Do you realise you've helped nearly 3 times this quantity of people with your program?" And it genuinely struck me hard. It genuinely physically affected me. I looked around me and saw these people, and then tried to imagine what 3 times that amount of people look like. And I was physically affected by it. I said, "My God, I've never seen that before. I've never seen the quantity of people. A number on a page looks a certain way, but when you see that quantity of people, and you imagine those people's lives and what they're doing every day secretly, away from your own eyes, how they get up every morning and have breakfast and look after their kids and go to work and walk the dog and go on holiday. All of those people have those individual secret lives going on." And it was just, it really struck me. I thought, my God, what I've done, it's a lot of people. And that's the only time it really struck me hard. It's a beautiful thing. I love what we do. We all love what we do,
No, it's definitely an amazing thing that you bring to this earth, and I think I speak for most of my audience. And wow, so I want to thank you so much, Charles, for coming on again.
You're always welcome, George.
By the way, what kind of music does Charles Linden listen to? I forgot to get that from you.
Well, I was taking a break out today, and I was just listening to some music, and strangely enough, I was listening to Elton John, to his greatest hits, because I just think he's I don't know why I just put Elton John on, but I've got a very eclectic musical ear, if you like, and whether it's rock music, I love rock music. I live just down the road from. I love rock music. I live down the road from Robert Plant, so I've kind of grown up with it around me. And
wow.
So I love rock. The classic sort of rock music, Whitesnake, AC/DC, Motorhead. But I also like New Romantic. So I used to like Spandau Ballet and Soft Cell. And
so you're open to anything, pretty much.
Anything really. Ed Sheeran, I was listening to today as well. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. This was an excellent show. I am so happy that you came on the King George Radio Show. And once again, you could just tell my audience real quick how to get to your website to purchase the Linden Method before we sign off.
Well, the American website is at panic-anxiety.com. That's panic-anxiety.com. Or you can just Google Charles Linden, and you'll find charleslinden.com, and from there you can navigate to any of our websites. If you want to see that video with Holly that I mentioned, it's on thelindencenter.org. And just for everybody that doesn't know, Linden is spelled Linden, Linden.
Linden, right?
Yeah, but
the program
panic-anxiety.com is the main website. Yeah.
Panic and anxiety. How do you say
panic?
It
it's panic-anxiety.com. So panic-anxiety.com.
Well, you have a great trip. The rest of your trip. Say hi to your kids and your wife. You did a wonderful spot here, and I do appreciate it. And you're welcome here anytime, Charles.
Thank you, Jordan. I've really enjoyed talking to you again. We'll talk very soon, I hope.
Absolutely. And to
everybody out there,
Charles,
please don't give up hope. You know, anxiety can be cured, guys. You know, just a last message to every sufferer out there. You know, there doesn't have to be desperation. You can be anxiety-free. You just got to do the right thing. And, you know, we're always here for
positive. You know, it makes me feel positive when you say that. It's just, you know, an adrenaline rush goes through me. Because, you know, when you dealt with this for so many years, you know, even though I feel that I'm better, you know, still hearing those words that you just said, you know, it's very special, and I appreciate it.
Good. Not at all.
Charles, we'll talk
care,
soon.
Jordan.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely, no problem.
Okay.
Take care.
Good night, Charles. Okay.
Good night.
All right,
Bye-bye.
ladies and gentlemen, that was Charles Linden from the Panic. Go to that website that he mentioned. Also, I want to remind you that tomorrow we will have a former WWE champion, Animal, will join us. Thursday, CNN's Beth Karras, along with Joseph Scott Morgan, will join us. And if you want to hear this again, you just wait 10 minutes, and you can hear this again. So once again, thanks to the Linden and the Linden Method. My advice, get it. Get it while it's good. Take care. This is King Jordan Radio.